I'm at a point right now where every sports gambler has been at some point. I'm just going to stop. I'm wrong all the time. I'm just going to stop. That's where I am with UNC and Bill Belichick. I'm just going to stop trying to predict what he's going to do with his program because I can't figure it out. I don't know. Right? I thought the 5 stars would come flowing in as soon as he took the job, and it was kind of a slow trickle. I thought he was going to have the most star-studded assistant coaches ever. Not only that, it turns out he left some money on the table, right? In his negotiations, the assistant coaching pool had more money than he ended up spending. I darn sure didn't think that their I keep calling it a spring game. Their event to finish spring, practice like a pro.
Practice like the pros.
Darn sure wasn't expecting his young 20s girlfriend to be all like on the field during practice. Like I'm done trying to predict what Bill Belichick and UNC are going to do. And that plays right in line with UNC getting a crystal ball prediction. For those of you that don't know, insiders for 247 Sports. Mm-hmm. They have insiders that cover every major college team. They have recruiting insiders. They have the opportunity to make what they call crystal ball predictions, which are an uncommitted player, recruit or transfer. You can put in a destination that you think they're going to do, and they keep track. They keep track of accuracy. They keep track of how often you are ahead of the masses versus when you're after the masses, right? Because anybody can watch 10 well-respected experts say, I think he's going to go to Texas, and then put in a crystal ball for Texas and be like, look at that, I'm 100%. So they keep track of all of it. Nico Iamaleava, the player that was the first college sports holdout that I can remember, worked out for Tennessee after being paid millions of dollars last year. Their starting quarterback worked out all spring, and then with one practice before their spring game, decided he wasn't going to practice until they renegotiated, wanted more money, was making like 2-point-something million, wanted 4, or what the reports are. That guy, after Tennessee and Josh Heupel, their coach, said, you know what? No. Right? They called the bluff. They said, see ya, we're going in a different direction. That player's in the transfer portal. And Brendan Sonnen, a Florida State insider, ironically, logged a crystal ball prediction for Nico to go to the UNC Tar Heels. Brendan's stats, he is an all-time on his crystal ball predictions, 83.41% correct. So about a little over 4 out of 5 that he makes are correct.
It's pretty good.
That's pretty good.
That's pretty good.
And he says Nico's going to UNC, and he was so confident he said it before anybody else. Josh Heupel, the Tennessee coach, discusses the team moving forward without Nico because, as I often say, how they'll find you is how they'll leave you. This is what UNC has to pay attention to if they're actually considering Nico as their quarterback.
Today's landscape of college football is different than what it has been. It's unfortunate, just the situation and where we're at with Nico. I want to thank him for everything that he's done since he's gotten here, as a recruit to who he was as a player and how he competed inside of the building. And so a great appreciation for that side of it. Obviously, we're moving forward as a program without him. I said it to the guys today. There's no one that's bigger than the power T, and that includes me. And they hear me say that a lot inside of that team room. This program has been around for a long time with a lot of great coaches, a lot of great players that came before that laid the cornerstone pieces, the legacy, the tradition that is Tennessee football. It's going to be around a long time after I'm done and after they're gone.
So there he is, basically saying, don't put yourself above the team. So think about what just occurred. If there actually is a link between UNC and Nico Iamaleava. A player left a program, and the coach basically said he was putting the person above the team, right? He said nobody's above the T that they call it out there in Tennessee. And within, a week, Bill Belichick reached out to him, or somebody representing Bill Belichick's team. I can't predict it. I'm done trying.
I think he can technically enter the portal starting Wednesday, I believe, is when it opens.
The spring window.
The spring portal, which you never know. Bill Belichick might be ready to start picking apart some guys.
And they reportedly have the money, and obviously, I said he saved money on assistants. Perhaps that money could be spent on players. There's other stuff. And the craziest part is, my mind went to how, why, who, what, when, where, like just so many questions. And I put that on Twitter, and immediately people started making really good points. Well, actually, if anybody's going to be able to deal with professionals, right, guys that think money first, play second, wouldn't it be the guy that had been in the NFL for the last 4 decades? Mm-hmm. He has way more experience dealing with players and contracts and money and structuring those sort of things in a way that makes everybody happy than college coaches who are more like the my way or the highway type. Great point. Check one for the masses on Twitter. And then somebody hits it with, well, isn't this also the most Bill Belichick move? How many times did he bring in, quote unquote, problem players in the NFL and get them to buy in? Think the Randy Mosses, think the Corey Dillons, right? Think he brought in players elsewhere that may have not fit in, and he's gotten them to buy in. So if Nico Iamaleava truly is as good as his recruiting rankings and pedigree would say, maybe Belichick is like, do you remember Randy Moss with the Raiders? I took that guy and turned him into a culture fit into our locker room. Bring on all of the 20-year-old issues. I deal with 28-year-old issues and made it work. And with every one of these points, and by the way, shout out to everybody that responded on social media. Thank you for following. Love your feedback. There's some things that make some sense here. Now, here's where it gets interesting. He usually took the problem players in the NFL after the league started souring on them and their price became cheap, right? He traded a 4th rounder for Randy Moss. He would sign guys to bottom bargain basement free agency deals when the rest of the league deemed them not worth the trouble. I believe Iamaleava is still looking for huge money. This doesn't strike me as, right, Tennessee bailed on him and now nobody else is offering him money. This strikes me as, actually, I still think there are people that would pay some. He was, in the 2023 class, the number 2 overall quarterback behind Arch Manning. And he didn't have the Manning name to boost his recruiting stock. So, all equal, he may have been number 1. And this is probably the last time he can transfer and promise potential. Because he was good last year. He wasn't great. And we got to see him up close and personal in that early season game against NC State. Threw for 2 touchdowns, also threw 2 interceptions. Ran for a touchdown, also had some questionable decisions being made. I wouldn't have looked at that and thought it was a $4 million player. But his potential, 6'6", real whippy arm, snaps it out there, spins it well, like that still plays probably for the last time this offseason. Right? If he goes somewhere and has another season, then he's going to get paid like an quarterback. There's very viral stats going around. He threw for 19 touchdowns. 10 of them were against kind of not great opponents. His 9 SEC touchdowns, 4 of them came against Vanderbilt in one game. Then he had 2 against Mississippi State and 1 apiece against Alabama, Kentucky, and Oklahoma. It's pretty bold to go like putting your foot down on $4 million after that season, but he can still trade off the potential right now.
This is where I'm curious how things go, because I think this whole situation is kind of setting a precedent. Mm-hmm. Because Josh Heupel and Tennessee saying, no, we're not going to cave into your demands. There's already an agreement with the NIL and all that stuff. Stick to the agreement. We're not going to cave in and give more. Mm-hmm. By them not doing that tells everyone else, hey, guess what? Don't try and pull these same tactics. And also, I don't know if you saw the report that it was Dan Lanning, the Oregon head coach, who told Josh Heupel, called him up and said, hey, just FYI, you're like the representatives for Nico are trying to find a better deal. They contacted us. We said no. I'm just giving you a heads up on that because we all know tampering takes place. And the fact that another head coach called a coach for another team and said, hey, FYI, this is going on, set this whole thing off. I'm curious to see if other teams around the country are going to sit there and say, you know what? We don't want this to be more of a problem. We're not going to take this guy.
Do you know
But
what?
then that's also where Bill Belichick also comes in, like, fine, I'll take him.
Do you know what the shame of it all is?
What's that?
I wonder if Oregon needed a quarterback, if that would have been handled differently.
Very true. Very good point.
We don't need a quarterback, so we'll be the upstanding individuals and, call it out and do that. We'd rather he go back to Tennessee because we're not afraid of Tennessee. The 2023 quarterback class, 2023 recruiting quarterback class out of high school, I think is going to mark a changing of history, right? I mentioned Arch Manning. He is making a boatload. He's got Red Bull. He's got all kinds of endorsements. There's Nico Iamaleava, who is he's used his leverage all the way through. The 6th ranked quarterback in that class was Jaden Rashada, who reportedly had an agreement with Florida for $13 million over 4 years. That fell through. He went to Arizona State, didn't work out there, went to Georgia. Now I believe he's like at Western Kentucky. And it all kind of started with this $13 million deal that didn't happen. And all of this is from one recruiting class. Quarterbacks are going to have to figure out a way to handle this a little bit better. And I'm not saying you can handle it like Arch Manning because he came with a built-in fan base, but it's tough. It's not easy to deal with the huge amounts of money being told and try to maximize your earnings while also being loyal and everything else. And then, of course, there's Bill Belichick in the corner rubbing his hands like, wait till somebody else makes a mistake and we'll be right there to pounce. And reportedly, he has the money to do some pouncing. If Nico shows up, goodness gracious. Because the other part is it's Belichick, so it's a highlight. Right? If this were like if it were Syracuse reached out to Nico Iamaleava, very little, but like, all right, that makes sense. They're trying to level up. But because it's UNC and because it's Belichick, it's like, whoa, let's talk about it. Belichick and Nico. Yeah, that's what happens when you have Bill Belichick as your coach.